Hey everyone, it's Matthew. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the school counsellor, and I've been asked to put together this session to discuss how you, as parents, can support your children's mental health while they're learning from home. While I'll be speaking specifically about learning from home, a lot of these skills and strategies are generally applicable, and I encourage you to use them to support your children even when on-site learning resumes. As students resume their school attendance in Term 4, some of them are going to bounce back with excitement and get back into their routines with ease. But there'll be some who continue to feel the emotional effects of lockdown for longer. It's important for you as parents to know that schools are going to be focusing heavily on social and emotional well-being when students return, which is something I will have a big part in. A number of recent studies have found that students who have experienced extended lockdowns have significantly higher than baseline rates of fear and anxiety, as well as a deeper range of difficulties with engagement in face-to-face learning settings. This is absolutely something that I'll be discussing with teachers so that they can support the children of our community, but it's something that you as parents can help your children with as well. So today I have 6 ways that you as parents can support your children's return to school after lockdown, whenever that return to school may be for your specific children. Number 1, be aware of the mental health impacts of returning to school. This might sound like a no-brainer, but hear me out. Humans in general aren't great with change, especially sudden and drastic change. It's something we've experienced multiple times over the last 18 months. And the return to on-site schooling will be another significant change for children. I know some children are pining for the return to school, and I almost guarantee some of you parents are too. But even with a positive and anticipating attitude, the reality remains going back is going to be a big change. Big changes commonly cause spikes in anxiety, emergence of avoidant behaviors, increases in stress, and difficulty sleeping. There's a psychological phenomenon called uncertainty bias, which, put simply, means that whenever major change occurs, our brains automatically view it as negative, even if it objectively isn't. My main recommendation to address this is to keep your children connected with something familiar, even if it's small, so that it gives them something stable to focus on. Perhaps they've been socializing with a particular student that you can encourage them to continue socializing with when school resumes. Perhaps more importantly, the routines that have been established for learning from home shouldn't be immediately discarded upon returning to school. Instead, try to phase them out slowly so that there's still at least some consistency present for your children. A really big one here that I think will affect most families is how much screen time children are allowed. Many families have allowed their children increased screen time during lockdowns, which is absolutely fair, but it isn't something that should be suddenly taken away once on-site learning resumes. Some children will be very resilient here, while some may just need more time to adjust. Regardless of where your child sits on this spectrum, know that it is something that will improve with time. Number 2, encourage your children to talk about their experiences with lockdown and returning to school. This works in both directions. You should encourage your children to speak with others about what happened for them during lockdown, but also open discussion with them about how their return to school is going for them. Some children, especially younger children, will have difficulty expressing these thoughts, and it can be helpful to provide them with alternative means of expression than talking, like art or play. For you guys as parents, this is something that occurs during wind down time from school, where you might play a game with them for 15 to 20 minutes and ask them how their day went during play. I like to ask open leading questions like, What did you think about going back to sanitizing your hands again? Questions like these encourage more than yes or no answers and are more likely to give you insight into how things are really going. Number 3, get your children to reflect on what they've learned about themselves and their strengths during lockdown. This is something that often surprises parents and sometimes even teachers with how much children are able to engage with. Post-traumatic growth theory has shown that children and adolescents have a great detail of resilience and are more than capable of learning from adversity. Children, by very nature of their usual lifestyles and schooling, are frequently exposed to situations that they've had to change and adapt to be able to overcome. While situations like lockdown are absolutely challenging, encourage your children to view it as a means of growth, something that they have learned from and have come out stronger as a result of. This is empowering, and it helps turn what may have been a traumatic period for your children into something that they can shift their mindset on to be a positive growth experience. Number 4, make yourself as available as possible. I know this is a difficult ask from some families, but it's still an important one. This doesn't mean that you have to drop your own work and life to be there all day for them. If anything, it'll probably still be less time consuming than your children have been during learning from home. But as children return to on-site schooling, they may come home and want to debrief. And as I'm sure you're aware, sometimes children want to debrief when you aren't expecting. The worst situation here is a child coming home and feeling as though they need to speak with you, but you being so busy that even if you want to, you can't speak with them. The best solution for this, especially if you're busy, is to deliberately create a space to be able to talk. Perhaps you go for a walk with your child, and it's in that space that they have the opportunity to debrief. Maybe you bake cookies together on the weekend. If they're willing, get them to help you cook dinner and use the time together as a social opportunity. These are great options in general to be able to speak with your children because there's less pressure in these circumstances than when sitting face to face. Check in with them. Don't assume your children are okay just because they seem to be, or because they haven't said anything. It's also in this dedicated time that you can engage with the topics from the second and third points that I made, getting them to speak about their experiences returning to school and getting them to reflect on what they've learned about themselves during lockdown. Number 5. Show confidence to your children that returning to school is the right decision. Being away from school for such a long time is likely to contribute to any child's existing anxiety about returning to school, particularly for any children who have experienced separation anxiety or other similar issues prior to lockdowns. However, even children who have never had any prior difficulties with attending school may still find the transition to be challenging. The lockdowns have likely been the longest periods of time most children have been away from school. And as humans, most of us become comfortable in our circumstances if we spend long enough in them. Even if they're no fan of being in lockdown, it has now become their usual. If we're going to provide children with a new usual, they have to know that it's the right decision. Any hesitation you have for returning to on-site schooling is going to translate into anxiety for your children. And while it's important to be open with your children, introducing unnecessary anxiety into their return to school is not only not productive, but can be damaging and harmful to their mental health. And finally, number 6, re-establish routines. This is something that should happen smoothly. Like I mentioned in point number 1, don't immediately discard learning from home routines. but begin to replace them with on-site routines instead. At the time of me recording this, there's still at least a week before on-site schooling resumes for students. And so you have the opportunity to get a head start and begin to replace some of the routines already. Get school materials ready and speak with your children about how exciting it's going to be to return to school. Most children are excited to be returning, to be able to see their friends, and that is absolutely something that you should focus on. Speak with excitement and model a positive mindset towards returning to your children. I know this is hard to say after the last 18 months, and I'm so hesitant to say it, but I encourage you to show your children hopefulness. It's what they need, and without opening a can of worms, perhaps that hopefulness is what we need too. So, to recap, be aware of the potential mental health impacts of returning to school. Your children may find the process difficult, and that's okay. We can support them. Encourage them to talk about their experiences during lockdown, as well as discuss with you how they're going with their return to on-site schooling. Get them to reflect on what they've learned about themselves and their strengths during lockdown, which will help to turn a negative experience into a positive learning opportunity. Make yourself as available as possible for your children to debrief, and I encourage you to set up a dedicated period of time where you're able to talk with your children about what's going on for them. Show confidence to your children that returning to school is the right decision. Any anxiety you feel around them returning is going to translate into anxiety for them too, which is the last thing we want children to feel on top of everything else. And finally, start to re-establish school routines so that the day they go back to school isn't a sudden, drastic change. Ultimately, while we still don't know the true extent and ongoing impact of lockdowns on children, I'm hoping that we'll be able to use steps like these to smooth their return to school and help to heal some of the trauma that our children have suffered. For all children, resilient or otherwise, these strategies will help them to feel understood, deepen their connections with you as their parents, and get them back into a school life that is hopefully a little bit more normal. I'm going to be running these sessions every week, so be sure to check back next week for more information on managing your child's mental health during periods of learning from home. This video is recorded, but I also run non-recorded sessions live on Mondays. And I encourage you to join in for our live sessions so that you can ask any questions that you might have about how best to support your child and manage their mental health. Good luck, and I'll see you next time.